Very good afternoon to all of you. So the topic for today's tutorial is about a specimen on a gynae viva table, and the specimen which is listed today is about ovarian cyst. Right. So I'll just share the screen with you. Right. So normally, whenever you describe any ovarian cyst or any specimen for that matter, you are supposed to first of all identify. So these are the few points which I would like to tell you. That first you need to describe the specimen, then you need to identify it. Then at times, if it is a specimen of, let's say, like ovarian cyst, they might ask you, can you identify to which side it belongs? Then what clinical features this patient may have? Like they may ask you about symptoms and signs. They might, the examiner might ask you about how are you going to diagnose it. Then they might ask you, is it looking more benign or malignant, and then why? Then age of this patient, can you guess the age of this patient? And then they might ask you the management of this patient, or is this management or is this specimen the only treatment which is available for this kind of disease, right? And then your management will depend upon the age group of the patient, if in general is asked about it, right? Now coming to the specimen which we have in our museum. Before going to specimen, this is a typical gross appearance of a hysterectomy specimen where the uterus is normal and there are two ovaries here, right? So just first of all learn how you describe. So this is a say you will say that this uterus appears to be normal. This is the body of uterus. This is the fundus. This is the cervix, right? Now the structures adjacent to uterus are called as adnexal structures. Now what, so adnexal structures are going to be the broad ligament, above it is going to be ovary and uterovarian ligament, then this is the fallopian tube, and anteriorly it's going to be the round ligament, right? Now we in gynecology we specifically have this adnexal pathology as a terminology, because these structures can have cystic enlargements, there can be development of malignancy here, there can be a fibroid here which arises in the myometrium but it grows in the broad ligament. So then when we do PV examination from here, we are going to find that something is bulging here. Normally you don't feel anything here when you do PV, it's going to be vagina here, right? So when you do PV examination, these are called as fornices. So the height of vagina just around the cervix is nothing but the fornix. So anything in the adnexa on whichever side is going to be felt through these fornices. So they are felt clinically. If you have, say, instead of the small ovary, they will not be palpable. They'll be palpable with a lot of difficulty. Unless the patient is very lean and thin, you're not able to palpate the adnexal structure, normal adnexal structure. So if there is a huge cyst which develops here, then you may be able to appreciate it through the fornix, right? So now this is the actual specimen which we have in the um, museum, right? So as you can see, this is the uterus and this is the lower part is cervix, right? Now this is the fallopian tube and this is the big ovarian cyst over here. And there is a normal ovary here and the other side tube is there. We have few more images here, right? Now this pedicle is nothing but the utero-ovarian ligament. Utero-ovarian ligament which connects the ovary to the uterus, right? And this is a fallopian tube. So if you ask me from anterior to posterior, it's a request to all of you to mute yourself, please. Yeah. So if you ask me the adnexal structures, they are from anterior to posterior. Anteriorly, it's going to be round ligament, right? Then it's going to be the fallopian tube, and posteriorly it's going to be the ovary. So this is this is the image of uterus which you are observing from posterior side. So this is the posterior aspect of uterus, because the uterovarian ligament is always posterior in location in all these three adnexal structures. So looking at this image, I can say that this is a right-sided ovarian cyst. Now, how do you describe this specimen? So there is a specimen. This is a specimen of jar-mounted specimen of uterus, along with the tubes and ovaries on both sides. the left-sided tube appears to be, if you are confused in exam first, say on one side the tube and ovary appear to be normal, and on the other side there is a big cystic mass which is seen, not seen separate from ovary, and ovary is not identified separate from this cystic mass. So this appears to be a unilateral ovarian cyst, and the cyst is unilocular. There is only one bulge of the cyst. It doesn't, it has a smooth surface, right? It doesn't have areas of, black, gray, black, brown, dirty areas. So it doesn't have areas of hemorrhage and necrosis. So it's a smooth walled, unilocular, unilateral cyst in the ovary. And looking at this specimen, it is on the right side, right? So this is how you're going to describe the specimen. So first try to describe the specimen and then go to the diagnosis. So you will say, after describing all these things, you're going to say that, so the diagnosis is right-sided ovarian cyst, or the specimen is of uterus with, left-sided normal tube and ovary, and right-sided ovarian cyst. This is how the specimen is, right? So if you see, this is the one-sided ovary. This is small and normal ovary. Normally ovaries are very small. They are almond shaped, structures, very small. They are not palpable also clinically, right? Now this is the other side of the, or the anterior surface of the cut section of the uterus, right? So this is the endometrial cavity. We always, after doing hysterectomy, we always cut the uterus specimen just to see if we have any pathology, if the patient has any pathology inside the endometrial cavity also, right? So by logic, by generalized rule, the cut side of the uterus is always anterior. That also you can remember. But it is always better to identify by the adnexal structures and its anterior to posterior location, right? So this is how the cyst is failed. So if I'm doing clinical examination of this patient, then these are the fornices. I'll be feeling a big cystic mass through the, you know um, right fornix of this patient, isn't it? And this mass is going to be cystic in consistency. It is going to be movable. It is not fixed because it is separate from this thing. And then the next question which can be asked to you is, now I had taken this one more image for you. This is a typical fresh specimen of hysterectomy, in which the uterus is, this is the anterior surface of uterus, and it is cut. It doesn't have much abnormality here, but there appears to be some mass here. At the same time, look at the ovaries. The ovaries are, they are also cut, but they don't appear to be normal, right? So this could be very well a specimen of ovarian malignancy, right? But what you have in our this museum is this specimen for you in exams, in undergraduate exams. So this is a ovarian cyst specimen. Now look at the questions. You have already described the specimen. You have identified the specimen. You have told what is the side of the specimen, or the, it is a right-sided ovarian cyst. Then what could be the clinical features of this patient? These are the questions which the examiner is going to ask you. Specimen, drug, anything on your viva table is just a means to start your viva or to assess your knowledge about that particular topic, right? So now they will ask you what clinical features this patient may have had. So you might say that the answer is going to be like, the patient may have pain in lower abdomen, then uh, dyspareunia if the patient is sexually active, right? And most probable symptom is going to be pain in abdomen in the whichever side is the pain. Then another complaint could be that she is having irregular menses. Now these irregular menses are itself because of this anovulatory ovary, which is becoming cystic, right? So this could be another symptom. So the commonest symptom is pain in abdomen, and another is some menstrual irregularity, right? Or if it's a big cyst, not this much, if it's a big cyst, like this cyst appears to be around 6 to 8 centimeters in dimensions, but then if it's a 20 by 20 centimeter dimension, then it's going to be palpable per abdomen. So it can be a abdominal lump also, right? So this is how the symptoms can be there for the patient. Now, what are the signs? Signs are going to be, if it's a palpable cyst, palpable mass per abdomen, you'll be feeling that mass. Then in PV examination, as I said, there will be some fullness in one of the fornices, or you can actually feel in bimanual examination. So this hand is going to be inside the fornix, and this hand is going to be in one of the iliac fossa, and you're going to feel in between. If there is the cyst, you'll be able to feel it, right? And at times it might be tender. If it's a ruptured ectopic pregnancy, it is going to be tender. If it's a torsion, if the cyst has undergone torsion around its adnexa, around its pedicle, then it's going to be quite painful for the patient, right? So these are going to be symptoms and signs. Now, the examiner might ask you, how are you going to confirm your diagnosis? So the always in OBGYN, I always tell my students that you must say ultrasound pelvis and ultrasound obstetrics. So in gynecology, at least say ultrasound pelvis. Most of the, because we are dealing with the pelvic organs, or ultrasound pelvis most of the time diagnoses all the pathologies, right? It gives you some idea of the pathology. So ultrasound pelvis will be a good diagnosis, good non-invasive investigation. And if it's a big mass, it is going to cause pressure symptoms on the ureter, on the surrounding structures. And if you're suspicious about malignancy, then you must know how much other organs are involved. In that case, you will have to do CT and MRI of the patient, CT scan and MRI of pelvis and abdomen also. Now, the examiner might ask you, looking at the specimen, do you feel this is benign or malignant? Now, there are definite features of benign and malignant masses. So, number one is age of the patient. So, you don't know this age of this patient, but because now the uterus has been removed, most probably this patient must be perimenopausal age group. Otherwise, you're not going to remove uterus along with such a benign mass. So, it is around, say, so what are the suspicions of malignancy in patient? One is the patient age, extremes of ages. If she's a very adolescent girl, then germ cells are quite common. Sex cord tumors are very common. And then if it is a perimenopausal age group, again the epithelial cell carcinomas are quite common. Then malignant masses are generally bilateral. Now look at this specimen. This specimen is unilateral, right? Then the surface here is quite smooth. It doesn't have those papillary excrescences, or those rough areas which are coming out, or cauliflower like areas which are coming up. But in ovary, we always call it as papillary excrescences. The surface is very irregular and dirty looking. So here the surface looks very smooth. It is unilateral, right? And it doesn't have areas of hemorrhage and necrosis, right? So these all things are going in favor of benign mass, right? Now, as I already uh, said before. Now, what could be the age of this patient? These are few tricky questions. If you have answered all the questions, then the examiner might ask you, okay, what do you think must be the age of this patient? So it's a common sense that because the uterus has also been removed with this ovarian benign cyst, the patient must have been around menopausal age group, isn't it? So you may say that she must be 45, 50 years or above, right? So the age of menopause is always 50 years. Don't say 40 years, right? It is 50 years. So perimenopause is around 45 to 55 age, around that age group that patient must be. Now, examiner will ask you how will you manage this patient in different age group, or the examiner might ask you, just forget about this specimen. If that same ovarian cyst is there for an adolescent girl, what will you do? If that same cyst is there for a reproductive age group, what will you do? Right. Now, coming to adolescent girls, now why, to understand that, you must understand why such benign cysts at times are also called as functional cyst. Now, or a functioning cyst or a functional cyst. So functioning cyst or a functional is labeled to the cyst, which is because of the normal function of the ovary, which has gone little abnormal. So what is the normal function of the ovary? To produce a Graafian follicle which becomes dominant, then it releases ovum, then it turns into corpus luteum, and then it shrinks. Now, in one of these processes, if there is any abnormality, there is going to be cyst formation. So there can be one cyst where the ovum does not get released. The follicle develops, but the ovum does not get released. Then it is a follicular cyst. If the ovum is released, but the corpus luteum does not shrink back, then it is a corpus luteal cyst, right? So these are called as functional cysts. For them, the treatment is just the functioning is not happening properly. So what are you going to do? You are going to just suppress the ovarian function. And how you are going to suppress the ovarian function? By suppressing the HPO axis. So how do you suppress HPO axis? By giving oral contraceptive pills. It is the easiest and cheapest way of treating this functioning ovarian cysts. Now, provided you're very sure that it is a benign cyst, it is not having any other symptoms. Like if the patient has associated symptoms like hirsutism, acne, then you must think about androgen secreting tumors. If the patient has severe menstrual irregularities, if sonography is showing some abnormalities, there is ascites or other associated factors, then you should be alarmed, and then you must get investigated. You must investigate that girl accordingly. But most probably, 90% of the ovarian cysts which are there in the adolescent and reproductive age group are functional ovarian cysts, right? Then say, all functional cysts are you going to treat like that? Most of them, which are less than 6 centimeters in size, can be, or 8 centimeters below that, can be treated with conservative management. Like if the patient, even if the patient has pain, treat her symptomatically and start her on OC pills for the next 2 to 3 cycles, thinking that this cyst will regress and there will not be another formation of more and more fluid, and there will be regression of this cyst. But say the patient has a big cyst, by the time she comes to you it is a 10 centimeter cyst, or it is a 6 centimeter cyst but she has an acute abdomen, right? So in that situation, what will you do? So number one is rule out that it is not, she's number one, if she's sexually active, rule out if it is not ectopic pregnancy, right? So if it is not like that and sonography is showing unilateral cyst, patient is in agony, cyst is big in size, cyst is small but it is causing acute abdomen, not relieved by your medications, then the next step is going to be laparoscopy, right? So you're going to do a diagnostic laparoscopy, have a look. Maybe if there is torsion, just correct that torsion, because this ovary is not, you're just not going to remove that complete ovary, because you want that ovarian function to persist. The earlier, if you remove the ovaries, patient is going to get, number one, adolescent girls may have future fertility problems, and reproductive age group women also need ovaries later on to avoid early menopause, right? So there is something called as just ovarian cystectomy which can be done instead of this, removing the entire ovary on that side. So there are two types of conservative treatments for these two age groups. Number one is you can just to remove the cyst and cyst wall and preserve that ovary. Or if you feel that that ovary is completely replaced by cyst and it cannot be preserved, that then you will clamp that, you will take care of that or cauterize that uterovarian pedicle, and laterally you will cauterize the infundibulopelvic ligament. So the ovary is suspended between two ligaments. One is attached to uterus, and the other one, the ovary is attached to the lateral pelvic wall by infundibulopelvic ligament. So these both ligaments, when you are clamping, then only you can remove the ovary, right? Now coming to perimenopausal age group. If the patient is perimenopausal in age group, then you must rule out malignancy, even if it is, looking benign clinically, even if the sonography is showing, benign features. Even if it is unilateral, smooth in this thing, it is always better to, rule out malignancy. So you are going to send the tumor markers. So you will send CA125, C199. So all these tumor markers are sent. And if you are still not convinced, if the size is very big and there is a history of malignancy, and then you are always, it is always better to do a CT scan and MRI. So in perimenopausal age group, you are going to first rule out malignancy. See why you will straight away not post her for surgery. First of all, confirm that it is not malignancy. If it turns out to be malignancy by screening methods like by CT scan, your CA125 or tumor markers, and then your next step is going to be, is she an operable malignancy, right? You just can't, take her to OT and just do surgery. So the next step is she operable? So the next step is going to be CT, MRI, and see the extent of disease. If the extent of disease is limited to the ovary, then you can straight away go with panhysterectomy, remove the uterus, and do the go ahead with this thing, Just a minute, I'm getting a call from hospital. मैं 10 मिनट में फोन करती हूँ, ऑनलाइन ट्यूटोरियल ले रही हूँ, दो. Yeah. So you must see the extent of the disease. If the extent of the disease is it has gone to the other organs of the uh, body in the pelvis, then you're not going to do exploratory laparotomy. Then you will require radiotherapy, chemotherapy or radiotherapy first, and then consider the further management, right? So these are all things which can be asked to you in exams. Then the other tumor markers should also be known to you, like the inhibin, then your testosterone. So there are definite tumor markers for other alpha fetoprotein, LDH. So these are all other tumor markers which are there for ovarian malignancies. But looking at this specimen, your viva is going to be more for the benign ovarian cyst. They might ask you more questions about on functioning ovarian cyst or functional ovarian cyst. They are of two types: follicular cyst and luteal cyst, right? Or luteoma, right? It is called luteoma. So follicular cyst is about the cyst which fails to rupture, right? And luteal cyst is the corpus luteum fails to regress. So these are two cysts which are called as functioning. They generally don't require any surgery unless they undergo acute torsion or they rupture and cause acute abdomen, or they cause hemorrhage because they rupture. So generally, most of them can be managed with oral contraceptive pills for the next 3 cycles or so, right? So this is all about the specimen of ovarian cyst. Just have a close look at the specimen. So this is how the specimen looks, right? So this is the ovarian cyst. This is the utero-ovarian ligament. This is the fallopian tube. This is the other-sided ovary. Another thing which I wanted to just revise is what are the types of hysterectomy? Whenever you have a specimen like this, they might ask you what sort of hysterectomy is this? Is it a pan hysterectomy or is it a subtotal hysterectomy like this? So always remember, when you remove only, just imagine that you are removing only the body of uterus without cervix and without adnexa. It is called as subtotal hysterectomy. That means you have just removed the body of uterus without cervix. Such hysterectomies are done only in obstetrics. Generally, they are done for obstetric hysterectomy for postpartum hemorrhage. When you do subtotal hysterectomy, when you have to do it in gynecology, it is generally done when the cervix is not accessible to you, maybe because she had previous 3-4 cesarean sections and the cervix is completely badly covered with bladder, or because of endometriosis or previous pelvic inflammatory disease, the cervix is not accessible for you to be removed, right? So that is called as subtotal hysterectomy. Next step is total hysterectomy. That means you have removed the cervix and the uterus. This is what we routinely do. So this part, when you remove, it is a total hysterectomy. So when you remove uterus, body, cervix, and one tube and ovary, then just a minute, I'll just show you this thing. So when you remove, say, uterus, cervix, and just unilateral tube and this sided tube and ovary, and you kept one ovary and tube inside, then it is called as total hysterectomy with unilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, right? And when you remove uterus, cervix, and both sided tubes and ovaries, it is called as total hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, or same thing is also called as pan hysterectomy, right? So instead of writing I have removed uterus, cervix, both sided tubes and ovary, I will say I have done pan hysterectomy. So one word when you remove the uterus, cervix, tubes, and ovaries on both sides is panhysterectomy. So I think I have made it very clear for you. So this you can always say in exam, this is a specimen of panhysterectomy where the uterus, cervix, both sided tubes and ovaries have been removed. When you remove the normal ovary, it is called as oophorectomy. When you remove the only cyst of the ovary, it is called as cystectomy. When you remove the um, um, diseased ovary, it is ovariotomy, right? So when you remove a normal ovary, it is ovariectomy. When you remove diseased ovary, it is ovariotomy. And when you remove the cyst, it is called as cystectomy. So these are few questions which can be asked to a student who does well in Viva. And I think I was very clear about it. So again, just go through these questions which can be asked to you on any specimen, right? So you first have to describe it, then identify it, then if it is a belongs to one of the sides of the body, then which side, then clinical features, then the diagnosis, how are you going to diagnose it, then whether it is a benign or malignant, right? Then age of the patient, then management in different age groups, and I've already discussed about functioning tumors. Then in the reproductive age group also, you're going to conserve the ovary as far as possible. If you are in doubt in OT, you can use something called as frozen section. It is a facility of histopathology wherein you don't require 2-3 days for the report to come. The pathologist comes to OT, they have a machine where immediately they can give you the most probable diagnosis. And if it is benign, then you can always conserve the uterus. So you will call for frozen section only when you want to conserve the ovary, right? So younger patients, you are in dilemma, the tumor markers are borderline, then you are going to get it, tested by frozen section, which is nothing but a facility of quick histopathology, which is done in OT by the pathologist and give you the diagnosis in the next 10 minutes or so. And by the time you can decide whether we should conserve or remove the ovaries and uterus, right? So this facility is available for all surgeons, all oncosurgeons, right? And then management will depend upon the different types, different age group, and the type of pathology, right? So I think we can discuss all the remaining questions on our WhatsApp group. And thank you so much for today's session, right?